All right. Hopefully this is reaching everybody who wanted to participate out there. But welcome to CAWcast 4. This is put out by the Centers for Adaptive Warfighting. I am Major Ryan Keller, and I am co-hosting with the man of the hour, Lucas Burke. So we are going to be talking with some innovators out in the fleet and some supporting facilities as well that are doing some good things and trying to keep everyone connected in this time of disconnection. So real quick, we are on Zoom. This is an open forum that should be thought of as anyone in the world can view it. So no FOUO discussions, everything is unclassified, and this should just be like we're out at a restaurant, all having a good conversation about what we do safely. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to the better looking counterpart, Lucas Burke, and he can get us started.
I have less hair than you. So as Ryan said, I'm Lucas Burke. We're both officers here at the Marine Corps Tactical Systems Support Activity out in rainy Camp Pendleton right now. And the idea for this CAWcast actually came from just a project I worked on while I was at the Naval Postgraduate School. And it related to innovation. And as I looked through my studies, I saw that, hey, there's a ton of organizations around the DoD, and I'm sure we have all been exposed to some or know of some or have heard of some that are innovating. And as I was looking at it, I was trying to decipher what these organizations did and who I could talk to and how could, hey, a junior Marine of mine reach out to one if he or she had a great idea. And so with the Centers for Adaptive Warfighting and NavalX, I got the opportunity to kind of take a step back and go, I'm in a position right now where I can actually reach out to folks and have them come and talk about their organizations. So that's what Ryan and I have done today. We've reached out to a whole host of organizations due to the COVID pandemic. Some were not able to participate today, but we're going to look at a future session for them. But by and large, we've got a great collection going from outside military, outside government entities, all the way down to Marine Corps University and some Air Force efforts. So to kick it off, we have NatSecGirlSquad. So Maggie Feldman Pilch, founder of NatSecGirlSquad. And what they do is they build competent diversity in national security and defense. They're revolutionizing how they can recruit, retain, promote, and support lethal, ready, and resilient force that the DoD and the government needs now and into the future. So Maggie, we will share the screen with you. We're going to do a Pecha Kucha format for those of you that don't know. Pecha Kucha is basically 20 slides auto-forwarded at 20 seconds a slide. And so it's going to be high calorie, lots of fun. But basically you're on the slide time limit. And so there's really no hiding behind, I can spend more time here or spend more time there.
Hey, Lucas, real quick, can I tip in for just a moment before we give Maggie the floor?
Tag in.
Oh, so one thing I just want to recommend and to ask everybody, there's a chat box that you can talk to panelists and the rest of the attendees. We encourage everyone to use that. However, there's also a Q&A function at the bottom. So if you have a question for a panelist or just generally, please use the Q&A tab at the bottom to ask your question. That way we can track it, and I'll just be managing that in the background a little bit. But yeah, that's all I want. There's a chat room. Use that for general discussion, Q&A for the panelists. And now I'm going to stop and learn. All right, Maggie, whenever you are ready, go ahead and kick it off and share your screen, and then we'll be able to know what you know.
And I appreciate you assuming that I am technologically capable of sharing my screen. Oh, there we go. There's a button for that. Isn't that comforting? So ignore the fact that I have titled this slideshow Machu Picchu. I just couldn't come up with anything else. So thank you for the intro and for doing the one sentence brief. And I would be remiss if I didn't go ahead and shame my little brother, who is at 29 Palms and is tuning in. So hello, Lieutenant Baby Brother. And with that, over to NatSecGirlSquad. So as you all already know at this point, my name is Maggie Feldman-Pilch. I'm the founder of NatSecGirlSquad. We are a for-profit entity, a social impact business focused on building competent diversity and national security and defense. So I think most of us probably have one of these rogue pull-up bars in our house, at least these days. And really what NatSecGirlSquad is about is challenging the default. Why do we have a picture of a rogue pull-up bar? Well, because pull-up bars are a standard width, right? They're a standard diameter. And much like the Army physical fitness test that asks us to do leg techs, the bar is standardized to a man's grip. And if you are not a man and you're doing pull-ups and you're being tested on pull-ups with a standard, you can't see me, but air quotes, standard pull-up bar, you're not actually just being tested on leg techs or pull-ups, you're being tested on your grip strength plus whatever exercise. So ultimately what NatSecGirlSquad aims to do is challenge the idea of the default, right? What have we built our system around, and are we aware of the standards we're using? And what are the implications of those choices? And if someone can just go ahead and tell me where I'm at seconds-wise, because there's actually not a clock on my view, that would be super helpful. So we talk about something called PMS, and those that know me have heard this before. What is PMS? Well, PMS stands for pale, male, and stale. The S is pretty important here. Why? Because you can't do anything about how you were born, right? It's not your fault that you were born a white guy, but you absolutely have control over whether or not you're stale. We consider PMS to be the most significant national security threat of our time, because at the end of the day, every challenge and opportunity we face is a people one. Who's in the room matters, who's making the decision, who's executing that decision, who's ensuring that the outcomes of that decision is fed back into the loop to command. All of those things matter. The messenger matters. And we're really concerned about basically PMS, right? So pale, male, and stale. This shouldn't be news to anyone who's ever heard me speak. What happens when we have PMS? Well, you're looking at it. Who our leaders are is not so much an outcome as it is a system. Obviously, when a system is built by a group of people that share a default position, right? When everybody's got the same grip width, they're not going to notice the bumps and bruises along the way, and they're probably not going to notice that it's not working for a huge chunk of people, right? And frankly, for the majority of people. And our viewpoint is really that if your culture, if your system, if your style of innovation, if your decisions are only suiting a small percentage of the population, then they're not good, right? We're really trying to do away with this idea that women need something special, that anybody needs something special, that in fact, what we talk about as the default isn't really the default. And we think about something called apple chocolate space, which is the distribution of goods. We're aiming for Pareto optimality. So for my fellow economists out there, the idea that how do we get everybody to the desired outcome, or as close to the desired outcome, without disadvantaging anybody else too significantly. Said another way, what is the most efficient use of resources? So what happens when you don't do that? And what happens when you allow PMS to fester? This is what you get. 7 versions of exactly the same thing, staring at each other, being like, wait, I'm unique. No, Spider-Man, there's like 50 of you and no one really cares because honestly, like, you're just an arachnid man. Other things that can happen when PMS is allowed to fester, really popular trends like the Saltine Challenge, which is exceptionally stupid. And another way of looking at it is how many times can you say the same thing, but in different words, ultimately resulting in the same outcome and also sounding like an asshole, right? So weird flex, but okay is the same thing as uncommon muscular fiber behavior, indicating that you are doing well and showing off, but is not necessarily an issue per se, right? You said the same thing, it was completely unnecessary, and you wasted everybody's time. And particularly when you're dealing with something like national security, you need to make sure that you're not wasting anybody's time and that you're doing what you intend to do. Another example of what happens when we allow PMS to fester, in my experience, I had the opportunity to sit in a room and listen to a bunch of senior former national security leaders try and explain to me why building a nuclear power plant in Egypt with the Russians was a good idea. And it was several years ago. I was even younger than I am now. And I didn't speak up. Unfortunately, down the line, somebody did. But just the bluff of that project was dumb. And someone should have been able to speak up, and more than that, they should have been able to be heard, and the idea should have never gotten as far as it did. So what are we aiming for? Lethality. And one of my favorite things about this picture is that you look at the outfits, nothing about this makes any sense, right? Like when you are aiming for lethal, ready, agile, resilient, you should make sure you're prepared to actually execute those things, and that your efforts, your ends, ways, and means match up, right? There's nothing about Danny Glover in a tweed suit that says like that's a man that can move quickly. This is really what we're aiming for. Functional, efficient, really more comprehensive, and like has pockets, right? Like anyone who knows anything about women's clothing knows that we lack pockets. If we had more pockets, we would be more functional. And again, competent diversity is about functionality. It's not about warm fuzzies. It's not about making anybody feel good. It's really about what works, and are we doing what works even when can we do the right thing at the right time, the right way? So what is NatSecGirlSquad? The NatSecGirlSquad is essentially the mob, but it's like a mob for America as opposed to organized crime. What I mean by that is we're an enormous, enormous community. At this point, we interact with about 30,000 people each month. So whether you knew about us or not, you're interacting with us. And the idea is we're here to take care of one another. We want to build expertise. We want to build confidence in that expertise. And we want to build and support institutional, repeatable change that takes into consideration the different cultures of different organizations. So one of my favorite outlets for humor, Terminal Lance, we are not looking for anything special or different. And I should be clear that NatSecGirlSquad is our name, but it is not, gender specific. Anyone who wants to be a NatSecGirlSquad can be a NatSecGirlSquad as long as you qualify, much like the Marine Corps. So you can have a stupid Marine Corps tattoo, and it has nothing to do with your gender. I've mentioned this idea of window dressing. For us, diversity is not a warm fuzzy. It's not something we do to sound nice. It's not a stock picture of a seemingly diverse group of people. This is about national security. If you are soft on diversity, you are soft on defense. It's my favorite talking point. This idea, again, that if you don't have the best people in the room and you're not supporting them in the ways they need to be supported, what's the point? So ultimately our aim is support America, right? That's why we're all in this business, decent meme. And this is basically what everybody is doing, right? Window dressing. This is what we want you to do. And with that, I would say this is a picture from our annual conference, and we've got, I guess, 5 people, but 7 agencies represented. This is what we're aiming for, especially the sweet ass members only jackets. And also world domination. So that's it. That's my first time using slides in 6 years. YOLO. If anyone has any questions, let me know.
That was awesome, Maggie. Thanks for that. Next up is Ken Cato. So Ken Cato is a White House Presidential Innovation Fellow. In short, it's a program that was founded under the Obama administration as a means to bring industry-leading technologists into government. He is detailed to the Navy and works within the Department of the Navy CIO, CTO office, and DISC and DWO organizations. Ken, you'll have to explain those to everyone. But the fellows are technologists with proven track records in leading innovation, especially around the topics of DevSecOps, cloud, and agile development. And he was formerly at Kessel Run, which I know a couple of our viewers are familiar with when it started before he became a presidential fellow. So with that, Ken, we'll turn it over to you, and you can start your
Cool. Well, thank you so much for your warm welcome presentation. And I gotta say that a lot of points you covered most of my presentation, so a lot of that will be repeated, so bear with me. And let me share my screen. Okay, can everybody see my screen? Yes, no, maybe? Great, all right, so here it goes. So my name is Ken. I am a White House Presidential Innovation Fellow. As Lucas mentioned, we're technologists that's brought in to solve difficult and complex problems in the technology landscape across government. And as he mentioned, I'm specifically detailed to the Navy. So I'm here to do a whole bunch of tech stuff. And before we go too far, as he mentioned, I came out of Castle Run. So Castle Run started about 3.5 years ago as a pathfinder as a means to discover, can we do agile practices in software development and have it work in the DoD. Long story short, mission accomplished. So now it's a fully funded, fully fledged program. Fair warning, I am from Massachusetts, which means I'm a masshole. That means I speak 2 languages, English and sarcasm. Just to level set what I'm about to say for the rest of the presentation, and just in case there are any sensitive viewers out there. So now that that's out of the way, so as it was mentioned, I am detailed to the Navy, and once I got to the Navy, been told to do a whole bunch of stuff. Can you help us with Agile, DevOps, DevSecOps, what have you, right? But the DoD is mired in the same problem that the rest of the government has, and that's really one simple thing, and that's waterfall. So from acquisition, the way we buy stuff, all the way out to the way we deliver, if we deliver, is so heavily laden in process that it just slows the entire process and speed down. So one of the first things I looked at to change that, to move that needle just a bit more, was the acquisition community. And I discovered that there's a bunch of products and programs that's been going on for a number of years that never delivered anything. The first thing I did was to start suggesting to defund things. So I now have free capital to now move towards more innovative things. So that's the first thing I did. Then slam with all these buzzwords, do DevOps, DevSecOps, like from everybody and their mother. So what they discovered is that there's a lack of education heavily in the Navy and across the fence. So the next thing I did was start to educate people on what these actual things were that they want to do, so we had the same context. But then they started making up words like software factory. So inside the Pentagon, I've been trying to push back on the word software factory and start a campaign for artisanal software where I want to just mess with people in general. So this is my own little personal joke. So if you ever hear someone say artisanal software in the Pentagon, this is why. The other thing is that we don't speak the same context. So whenever I said agile, I never heard the same meaning from different folks that spoke to in the Navy. So the next thing I realized was that now let's get really precise and in the same boat about what we're talking about. So I referred everybody I work with to the Agile Manifesto. So this is something that's really been well defined for over a decade on how basically not through waterfall. So this, this single process right here was a really huge thing, and what this helped me to do, the educational part, was really push the needle towards now culture change. So to get there, I started to talk to people about what are the important parts of culture change. The bias or action, the strong opinions Lucy held, so on, so on. The biggest eye-opener for them was stop beating bureaucracy. And right now, I'm still going through the rough motions of how to deal with that. And the first part is what they want me to do is go to the cloud. So as you all know, as some of you might know in the defense community, going to the cloud is not a trivial thing. Anybody can get an AWS account, except for if you're in the Defense Department, you have to jump through 25 hoops to get an AWS account. So the first thing I'm happy to announce we're about to change at the Navy CTO level is that we're going to start a new PO digital. We're going to be bringing the Naval Commercial Cloud Service, NCCS, into the fold under the new PO digital. So they will be the acquisition and cloud broker for the entire Navy. So that will be an announcement coming as a memorandum quite soon for the CTO office. I also want to give some shout outs. So there are plenty of folks in the Navy that are pretty well enabled, but they still got blockers, like the NavalX kids at the Arena who do a bank-up job in their own installation of OpenShift. the Warfare Center out at China Lake doing groundwork, all the folks at Point Magoo doing the knobs, which is the jumps transition. So really get some shout out to folks who are doing the right thing. The most commonly I get asked about how to do a continuous ATO. And I want to give you a little insight that I didn't come up with it, that this was a well-defined idea in industry. So before the idea of a continuous ATO, I borrowed the idea from AWS, who expressed it very simply as a shared security model. What a shared security model is exactly what it sounds like, right? AWS, I'll trust you to lock down what is the cloud, and me, the customer, will lock down what is in the cloud. So I applied the same idea to start to go down the path of the RMF inheritance model. The output of that work is what we know today is the continuous ATO, what became a software development lifecycle. So this is a little example of like what we matured in KR as well as Platform One, and how we're trying to push the idea forward about trusting a process and not necessarily the actual RMF parts. And I know that the first thing everyone says is, well, ATOs are hard, right? And I get that. And I'm trying to do right now, talk to the NAOs, FAOs, etc., and educate them on this exact topic, that yes, it is hard, but it is irresponsible of us to slow down ATO to 2 years so we can't get needs out to warfighters. So that next iteration I'm about to do, what we'll be announcing soon, is to disrupt culture. So I will be working with the Digital Integration Support Cell and the Digital Warfare Office to make a formal partnership with Platform One, where we'll be making shit happen, to quote my friend Brian Kroger. And the idea is to start kind of providing the idea of what cloud looks like and what a secure platform looks like and how continuous ATO works. So that's my time. Thank you so much. Those are my 2 emails. I prefer the .gov, and if you need to reach me in the mail, it's on the bottom. And right now, the President Innovation Fellowship is open for applications. So go to pif.gov, come apply if you think you forgot what it takes. Thank you so much for everyone's time. Woo, 6 minutes, 40 seconds.
I was just about to say 6 minutes and 40 seconds on the nose. That was awesome. That was awesome. I really appreciate you telling us about the PIF and kind of what you guys have been working on, because that is a very important thing right now, you know, as the DoD looks at the cloud and what is the cloud, and different services have, I think, different perspectives on what the cloud should be. So really appreciate it. For the Mr. Ben Bain is from the Defense Innovation Board, and it's an advisory board in the Office of the Secretary of Defense. It's a SecDef established federal advisory committee that provides independent advice and recommendations to the Department of Defense on how the department can better accelerate innovation, be it new technologies, culture change, or approaches to address culture or to address current and future national security challenges. Again, for myself, speaking for myself, the DIB is something I've heard a lot about. Eric Schmidt actually came to the Naval Postgraduate School and talked to us a little bit about it, but just from the operational level, I guess I would say, I know very little about it. So Ben, really appreciate you taking the time to come talk about what you do and what the organization does. So without further ado, Ben, we'll kick it over to you.
Hey, thanks, Lucas. Appreciate it. All right, going to get started here. So good afternoon and good morning, everyone. I'm excited to share with you a little bit about the Defense Innovation Board, affectionately known as the DIB. You may have heard of us. We're a pretty big deal in very, very, very small circles. So my name is Ben Bain, spelled B-A-I-N, not B-A-N-E. And this is me having turned an old Army tan t-shirt into a 5-layer coronavirus defender. I've been on the DIB staff for about 2 years, mostly working on issues related to DoD's digital workforce. So what is the DIB? We're a federal advisory committee established in 2016 by Secretary of Defense Ash Carter to provide independent advice and recommendations. The DIB presents its work in the form of publicly released reports and recommendations about 4 times a year. We've moved around a bit since we started, but right now we proudly sit in the office of the Undersecretary of Research and Engineering within OSD. Together with such innovation pillars as the Defense Innovation Unit, DIU, the National Security Innovation Network, ENSIN, and DARPA. With the full support of our leadership, we still address issues across the whole department, though. We exist to help the department better accelerate innovation, be it through technologies, culture change, or structure and process, to address current and future national security challenges. We often quote our chairman who said, DoD does not have an innovation problem, it has an innovation adoption problem. So why should anyone listen to us? Well, it's not because we have money and authority, because we don't. It's because we have outstanding, really awesome board members. DIB's membership represents a cross-section of business leaders, entrepreneurs, academics, and technologists with diverse perspectives. Over the last 4 years, we visited DoD installations around the world and earned credibility by listening, building genuine relationships, and offering sometimes hard-hitting recommendations. We also have a full-time staff who in normal times sits in the Pentagon. We've got GS civilians, military and civilian detailees, contractors, and IPAs, a motley, hard-working crew. We're doing the day-to-day work, gathering information, sharing ideas, and connecting people. We won't give you Neil deGrasse Tyson's personal email, but we might be able to get him interested in your work. Our Science and Technology Subcommittee has mostly focused on digital technologies, such as cloud, modern software development, and artificial intelligence. DoD is far behind industry in many of these areas, and DIB continues to push hard for DoD to improve its digital capabilities at scale. We've had some pretty big wins in these areas. We helped establish the Joint AI Center, the JAIC. In one of our earliest recommendations, we called for that, Center of Excellence. Our year-long study on software development and acquisition is all over recent NDAAs and is being implemented by Ellen Lord, the Undersecretary for Acquisition and Sustainment. And our recommendations on the ethical use of AI, developed over 14 months with input from dozens of global experts, were recently adopted by the department. We also have a workforce, behavior, and culture subcommittee. In this area, we've put a lot of focus on digital and innovation talent, as well as innovation training and frameworks, such as lean startup and design thinking. DoD needs to better develop and empower its people to adapt quickly and think creatively. And this is the subcommittee that I primarily support. So, how do we decide on projects? We try to balance being responsive to demand signals in the department with identifying blind spots in which DoD is falling behind industry or strategic competitors. So sometimes it's a pull and sometimes it's a push. We take ideas from all over, board members, senior DoD leaders, and even Congress. Importantly though, we can also be a voice for all the innovators and entrepreneurs struggling against a slow-moving, rigid system. We have the platform to articulate challenges no one seems to be addressing, and to highlight and celebrate teams who are finding creative ways to improve their mission outcomes. This is the power of our connected ecosystem. As just one example, our board members heard for years from active duty service members that outside of cyber, there were very few opportunities in any of the services to develop and apply digital expertise, such as software development or AI/ML. Once these talented folks hit the limit of their frustration, they simply left for the private sector. So we took it upon ourselves to explore why DoD is struggling to attract, develop, and retain active duty digital talent. We got incredible input from junior innovators captured in the anonymized stories detailing how the system has failed them. We have to do better. Our recommendation called Workforce Now offers immediate actions to support and protect the very people we most need to keep. Talking to the DoD innovation ecosystem here, all of you listening in, we being the DIB, cannot be effective without really understanding what you're doing and what challenges you're facing. So stay in touch, share your stories with us. We could use your ideas for new recommendations and your input on our current projects. And speaking of current projects, these are two areas we're looking into. So if you're working on either of these things, or you know someone who is working on these things within the department, please get in touch, let us know. Another two areas we're looking into on my side of the team, how might we make better use of our reservists with digital skills? And how might we offer a shared understanding of innovation to guide DoD's development, assessment, and integration of efforts? Come talk to us if you have ideas. To close, never underestimate the importance of questioning the status quo. Some of you may recognize this photo, but one of our best moments for DIB came when we visited the Air Operations Center at AGITARE Air Base in Qatar. Our chairman, Eric Schmidt, saw a group of men working on a big whiteboard. He asked them what they were up to. Turns out they were planning by hand air refueling operations for the entire area. This was an easily solved problem using modern software, but the software the team had access to didn't work and contracting didn't allow them to fix it. This is the kind of thing that is keeping DoD from reaching its full potential. Ultimately, Eric's question led to the establishment of the Air Force's Kessel Run software development team. For the full story, look up the Fast Company article on how the Air Force learned to code. So check out our website at innovation.defense.gov to see all our past recommendations and for information on upcoming public meetings. The next one should be the end of June. And don't be shy about emailing me if you have any questions or ideas. Thank you.
Ben, really appreciate you talking about the DIB. And that was one of the things Mr. Schmidt talked about when he came out to NPS was the start of Kessel Run based on that small problem. And now look at Kessel Run and everything they've done throughout the DoD. So really appreciate that and providing more information. So right now, Ryan's going to tackle a bunch of the questions that we've gotten in the Q&A. If the three panelists want to turn their cameras on, Ryan, I'll let you lead this effort.
All right, innovators, thank you so much. Wow, this is thrilling for me. So we'll start with Maggie. So you answered it in the Q&A. Thank you very much. But I wanted to also let you go ahead and talk about this out loud. Do you see, this is from Chris Reagan, do you see government IT telework capability as current result of PMS? If so, how do you recommend we attack the problem and gain leadership support and associated resources and counter the perception we're attacking the people and avoid degenerating the issue into a food fight?
So great question. Short answer, yes. In my experience, most things can be traced back to culture and systems and processes and all of that, right? So when in doubt, blame PMS. There's a lot we can do about it. So NatSecGirlSquad, and not to overly highlight what we're doing, but just because that's what I can speak to with authority, we are doing something called NatSecGirlSquad Goes Antiviral. So we provide professional development, continuing ed, PME, as well as kind of like more personalized support to our members. And we do that virtually and in person regularly, in normal times. Right now, that's all virtual. So NatSecGirlSquad Goes Antiviral is a programming kind of situation where all of our stuff is now completely virtual, both live and on demand, and it's free. So generally though, when you're dealing with any sort of problem, it helps to just kind of ask people what they need, right? So one of the things we did in November with our partner Guidehouse was work with an academic at the University of Alabama to complete an IRB approved survey to better understand what are the challenges of people entering the field once they're in, what challenges are they facing, and if they choose to leave, why. And so we kept the survey open for about 10 days and had 871 responses to 72 different questions. And we check in with our members pretty regularly and just kind of ask them like, hey, what do you need? So in my experience, if you are dealing with a problem, maybe just ask people what's not working, right? So some of the challenges we're hearing is the belief that, oh, you're working from home, so therefore you're more flexible. No, especially when you're talking to women who are disproportionately responsible for responsibilities for home and kids and all of that. Like, people are not less busy than they were a month and a half ago. So this is a long-winded answer and I apologize, but ultimately what I'm saying is like, just ask people. Second of all, in terms of gaining leadership support, don't overthink it, right? Like, we are all in this business for the same reason. We're all here because we want to make the world a better place. And we want to make sure that America is as secure, stable, and prosperous as possible. And we want to support our friends and allies. And again, kind of going back to this idea of NatSecGirlSquad and competent diversity not being about window dressing, but being about that core mission. If you can frame it in that way, right, that you want to support your people so they can be as competent and capable and efficient and lethal and ready and agile and resilient as possible, anybody who can't get on board with that just needs to get the fuck out of the way. That's my answer.
Yeah, well, just ask and don't worry about a no. No, I love that. Thanks, Maggie. I appreciate that. Next question, Ken, this will be over to you. This is from Devin Smiley. Can you talk more about the customer side of shared responsibility model more? The institution still talks about that in a very binary manner without much detail.
Sure. So the hard parts to really think through, especially in context to what we had to lock down on the defense side, is that for the longest time, the documentation was really, really sparse about what do we need to do in terms of what security parameters we have to apply. But it became more and more clearer as the publication for the DoD's cloud security guidance became much more verbose about what you have to lock down. And then it becomes down to lessons learned. So this specifically comes down to what you know that each cloud service provider, CSPs, do by default. So example, right? If you go to Google's cloud platform, they do crypto and lock everything down by default, unlike AWS, where if you have an S3 bucket, it's open to the world unless you yourself lock it down. So this is the difficult conversation about you really do need people, professionals in the cloud space that understands the security implications well and what this all means. And you also want to have a team to pen test it. You want an outside perspective to come in and make sure that you're not leaving something out in the open that you're not aware of. Like every big hack that occurs on AWS or anywhere else, or any cloud service provider, isn't a hack so much as a security vulnerability. It's not even a vulnerability, it's just a bad security setting. So when it comes to the shared security of the customer and what we have to be responsible for, really is being mindful about what data you have out there in the world and what you don't intend to publish. That's, but and you just have to be A, mindful, but B, get the skill set necessary. Don't try to wing it. This is how you get the terrible data leaks. Hope that answers your question. If not, please comment in the Q&A.
No, great response. And don't go anywhere because it looks like there's one a little bit further down the line. Right over to Ben now. This is from Sean Bertholf, and I apologize for any attendees if I butcher your name. Sincerely sorry. Question for Ben. I'm really interested to understand more about what you meant when talking about how do we better utilize reservists by utilizing digital.
Thanks, Ryan. Yeah, so this is an open project. So we are still trying to scope this. We hope that we might have a recommendation ready for our end of June public meeting, but this is going to be similar, at least at the start, of what we believe will follow in the lines of the workforce now. So we've got active duty talent. They've got a certain set of skills where they, for the most part, are not able to apply those and be supported for a career in some of those digital skills. On the reservist side, though, we've got a lot of people that are reservists and they do super cool things on their in their private sector job, and they might not be able to find opportunities to apply those within the reserve when they're doing their reserve force. So, you know, there's a lot of ideas floating out there. We're hoping to talk to a lot of folks. How do we make our reserve force more accessible, more kind of on demand, more instant connection and matching? So if you've got any ideas or you just want to highlight some of the challenges, please email out to us. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Ben. On that note, personally, I am talking and working with folks actively working that problem. So you can certainly expect a reach out from me. Moving on, and Ben, I think this is to you as well. So this is from Bill Kozlowski. For C2 machine to machine, are you specifically looking at inter-service data link sharing or something on a broader scale? For reservists, are you looking at digital initiatives for drilling to mitigate cross assignment or bolstering the BYOD programs that have already been released?
Well, this will be a short answer. Bill, for the C2, that is the other side of the house. I do the workforce behavior culture stuff. All the other stuff, the hard tech stuff, gets done by some other folks. So if you want to email me, I would be glad to connect you and they could kind of give you a little bit more information and see if you can tie into that project. And then again, on the reservist, this is an open project. So we're just going to try to see if there are any recommendations that it is worth DIB making on this space, if we can add some value in trying to improve the connections for reservists with certain types of skills to projects that really need their help.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Now, this is a question for both Ben and Ken from Sean Bertholf again. You mentioned cloud as a focus. I'm wondering your thoughts regarding how the Microsoft award pulled the rug out from Amazon will support the ability of the DoD to tap into cloud capabilities and efficiencies.
Ken, you want to take it?
Sure. So this is me speaking. It's my opinion. I do not, please keep that in mind. I don't believe that any one vendor should be the end all be all to this, right? So I don't think that the JEDI contract award should be so impactful to a point where it affects the DoD negatively. What we should, however, keep pushing forward to, and what I'm trying to do in the Navy right now, is to remain platform and cloud agnostic, so it doesn't matter. So this goes back to my point about education and how the Defense Department should keep pushing on the idea of lethality. We should rely on industry partners. We shouldn't rely on industry technology per se. So that's what I've been pushing for. Ben?
Thanks, Ken. Yeah, just to double down on that, we the DIB has, since the start, talked about how important it is to have cloud and for everybody to understand how that works and how for us to be able to apply that better or to build programs on top of that. But in terms of the contract, we're definitely not going to touch that. We're just going to leave that alone. We hope that gets settled one way or the other. We just need the capability.
All right. It looks like a couple of the remaining questions, which first of all, thank you to the panelists that have been answering them, and please continue to do so if you feel like you can attack that. But there's definitely some people that are interested, Sean and Denzel Bridges, that are interested in getting connected with the DIB and you guys specifically. So whatever you feel comfortable with, would you mind answering those questions in terms of the best way to get in touch with you? I know, Ben, you threw out an email back there, but either in the chat so that other ways can people, or you can answer back in the Q&A. So this is just a general question, it looks like, for the whole group. So, I'll throw it into the food fight from Todd Wiseman. Can you share more about where and how you would like to see artificial intelligence focused? Topic near and dear to my heart. Do you have access to AI in your clouds?
Am I going first because I'm unmuted first?
Oh, I don't know. You are more than welcome to, Maggie.
You know what? I'm going to keep it ladies' prerogative because there's only two of us, so somebody's got to talk. I will also say somebody asked me about what are the qualifications or requirements for joining NatSecGirlSquad, and I answered it privately, and I realize others may have questions about this. There aren't any. Ideally, you're not a Russian troll. You just head over to our website, read over the code of conduct, which is listed under the About page, and if that sounds good to you, congratulations, you're a member of NatSecGirlSquad. It's pretty easy. So I'm not going to talk about our cloud stuff, one, because I'm not the tech side of our house, and we are in the process of building a platform, and so, like, I don't know, I'll ask. But how would I like to see AI focused? Shoot me for being a broken record. I don't care about AI until I know who's building it. Because the amount of times that people build things that are just not functional because they have no idea who they're building it for, and the team building it doesn't reflect anybody using it, blows my mind. I would love to see that change. So in terms of where and how I would like to see it focused, maybe focus on who's building it, why they're building it, and do they actually reflect the users? And are they aware of their own blind spots? And then I'll start thinking about how I'm going to work it into the new NatSecGirlSquad platform.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, UX is a topic near and dear to my heart, and ensuring you're connecting with your customer and solving the requirements for them. Certainly. Ken, Ben, do you have anything to add?
For me, just more by I twitch whenever I hear AI, that we don't have artificial intelligence, but I'll stop there. John's heard my rant about this a couple of times now. But yes and no. So there is there's always been some kind of algorithm and math-based solutions within the Navy and the DoD as a whole. I think the question that I want to start thinking about is how do I now move that workload to make it more widely accessible and highly scalable? That's the part I'm really focused in. So it's not so much whether or not I have AI access, it's whether or not can I make that workload successful in the paradigm of a cloud and have it widely available to all service members.
Yeah, and I'll just briefly add to that is that I don't think the DIB has kind of come down on saying that they want any specific application here or there. It's really about the overall capability and capacity. So one of our previous recommendations called the Campaign for an AI Ready Force. If anybody wants to go onto our website and check that out, we tried to emphasize that it's a holistic effort. It takes people, it takes technological infrastructure, it takes data, it takes the leadership and process and structure to be able to bring all those things together. So that's kind of the level that DIB is interested in, but in terms of specific applications, we tend to just leave that to the JAIC and all the services.
Thanks, everybody. Maggie, you've got another question here. So what role does engaging in K-12 education play in addressing diversity issues?
So great question. And I was typing the response, but I'm happy to just say it out loud anyways. I'm not a fan of pre-professionalizing the future force or frankly the current force before we need to. And some of that is personal biases. I mean, I come from a liberal arts background. I have an undergraduate degree in economics and opera performance and 2 master's degrees, one from Georgetown School of Foreign Service and Security Studies and the other in opera. So I would have fallen through the cracks. And frankly, I think it makes me a better national security practitioner to be coming from someplace else. That being said, of course, NatSecGirlSquad is not a nonprofit, but there's an organization that I support and that we partner with a great deal called Girl Security. They're actually based in Boston, but they work directly with young girls, middle school through high school, the occasional elementary schooler, on educating them on what is national security and also better understanding what does national security mean to them. So an example of the work they do is they've created a cybersecurity badge with the Girl Scouts, which is incredible. So I think, K through 12 education matters, but it's not the whole game, right? And making people, and especially kids and young adults, narrow their field of vision earlier and earlier is not going to fix our silo problem. And I say that because competent diversity is not the same as diversity. Diversity for the sake of diversity, diversity for window dressing doesn't fix our problem. We need people with diversity of experience, diversity of thought, diversity of skills. And it's exactly like that Spider-Man meme, right? Like literally every single one of those Spider-Man has the exact same strengths and the same weaknesses. So pre-professionalizing earlier doesn't help us.
Absolutely. As a father of someone who's recently worked on the cybersecurity badge, I thank you for supporting that effort. So that is excellent. We have a big question here from Sean Bertholf again. So he's just saying he participated last Thursday in the Defense Innovation Network Summit focused on COVID-19, and he was fascinated by Darwin AI, who are doing an open source thing utilizing their AI neural networks to not replace but supplement existing testing capabilities. So they basically pipe in chest x-rays and can utilize it to get smarter about the probability of COVID-19 infection, but also probably severity, if they will live or die, and how long they will need to be in the hospital. Results quicker and a great data point for the health practitioner. So he's wondering if the DoD has any desire to tap into this capability to support rapid screening of service members in high-risk areas. So a timely question. And if we don't have the purview on it, that's fine in this forum, but certainly if you have something to add to that, please do.
So as a Presidential Innovation Fellow, I actually am well aware of the open source Darwin AI they put on GitHub. And so we have cohorts in the VA. So right now I'm working with the VA to see if I can anonymize x-rays. So the problem right now is that the x-rays are tied to an identity, and we can't really just pass any PII over to an open source project, especially that we may not host, The other thing that I think I'm going to try to work with cloud.gov and 18F is to stand up an instance of the open source version of Darwin AI released to GitHub on AWS GovCloud that they control and the VPC that we can lock down, and hopefully work with the VA to start pushing the X-rays out, and we're going to try to figure out on that form. So I'm glad you asked that question. It's something I'm actually trying to tackle right now myself.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Ken. Ben, Maggie, anything on that issue, or are we all good? This will be our last question for the current time frame.
I'll just say that maybe you want to re-ask that question for Zach Lucas from the Jake when he comes on during the next round, because he would be better placed within DoD than I would. But Maggie, you?
I mean, no, I've been asked to just give a really quick little thing on the programming we're doing. NatSecGirlSquad goes antiviral, just to be clear about who's participating in that, both as speakers and attendees. It's open to all of you. Would love to see you there. In terms of those presenting, we've got everybody from current DASDs to former DASDs. We have two former SecDefs who are scheduled for the next 5 weeks. So it's really anybody and everybody in their small group sessions. So would love to see you all there.
Great. Ken, Ben, Maggie, thank you very much. This has been exhilarating. Ben, I think you have a couple of hanging chads in the Q&A tab. If you don't mind responding to them as to the best way to get in touch with the DIB. But again, thank you. Lucas, we'll pass it over to you.
Thanks again to everyone. I think one of the things that I've found in just hearing all the panelists today is the passion, and hopefully everyone out in the ether has gotten that too, just the passion that everyone has for their projects and their organizations, and really trying to push the Department of Defense and national security forward, be it through outside perspectives in AI and DevSecOps, or, making sure that we have a diverse workforce with, folks that do have a master's degree in opera, are able to take a hard look. In one of the courses, or both courses we teach actually, with the Centers for Adaptive Warfighting, diversity is a huge piece of it. And when you looking at something, making sure you have diversity and folks from across the spectrum to be able to answer those questions and provide their own unique perspective. So thank you to all the panelists. And next up, we'll have Tech Sergeant Dan Holter to come talk to us about Project AGITARE. And Dan can correct me if I'm wrong on that pronunciation. But Dan is actually one of the folks that I consider a leader in this space. I got linked up with him pretty early on. Some of you may have heard of human-centered design, and we teach with the Centers for Adaptive Warfighting an offshoot of that called warfighter-centered design. And Project AGITARE has the goal of maintaining events and rosters of trained design thinkers and facilitators so that units around the world, when they have a problem, they can reach out through this project and find someone that can help facilitate their problem-solving session. And then on the facilitator side, we're able to maintain our skill sets, because it is a perishable skill. And walking people through their problem and kind of problem discovery, solution discovery is a big piece of it. So without further ado, Dan, I'm a huge fan of yours, you know that, and I'll kick it over to you for your brief.
All right, thank you so much. Let me just see if this thing works. And
got it.
Looks good.
Is that looking all right? That's a picture of my face. All right. Hello, my name is Daniel Holter. I'm an Air Force technical sergeant, and I want to tell you about a project I'm launching under the Defense Entrepreneurs Forum called Project AGITARE. To illustrate the problem that Project AGITARE seeks to solve, I want to describe my experience learning to facilitate design thinking, human-centered design, and think wrong, and what happened after that. In 2018, I started writing articles about creating a culture of collision and connection rather than competition to pursue innovation. I was starting to question the theory of innovation that idea competitions rely on, which is that fully formed, great ideas just needed to be sorted out from all the bad stuff. Inspired by books like Where Good Ideas Come From by Stephen Johnson, I suddenly saw innovation as driven by connection, not isolated epiphanies. I learned from Adam Grant that in this thing called design thinking, bad ideas are actually part of the process. They can be good ingredients for better ideas if combined by facilitation. I attended a human-centered design boot camp from National Security Innovation Network, which got me even more excited about design thinking and further convinced me that facilitation was the best catalyst for innovation. I started reading and writing even more about innovation, attended classes in Think Wrong and I-Core, and was invited to help stand up an innovation office for my wing. Our small team of airmen and NCOs in that wing innovation office practiced and experimented with facilitating design thinking for a few months. And even as amateurs, we saw incredible outcomes. We started training others, offering our services to units and flights, and hustled to get anybody to let us help them scope problems or develop products as facilitators. We developed this idea that facilitators as innovation enablers could be embedded with every unit and flight across the wing. And that was where we could have the greatest impact on increasing the innovativeness of our units and airmen. We called it the Innovation Advocates Program. We attended the Think Wrong 3-day public course, which was amazing, and we ramped up our efforts to facilitate for units. It was a difficult uphill battle. We were learning how to facilitate as amateurs while at the same time trying to instigate change in the face of this incredible cultural inertia to the adoption of new methods. We pushed and marketed and started to make a name for ourselves, and it was difficult, but we had a team and rituals that helped us learn, iterate, recover, and improve, always making progress. Dry runs, practice, planning, retrospectives, all of these had a huge impact on morale and how capable we were as facilitators. Then we attended the 25th Air Force Innovation Summit. 3 of us facilitated a room of about 30 for a 1-hour facilitated session with about an hour of planning because one of their scheduled speakers had pulled out. A few people told us that it was the highlight of that 2-day event for them. We had been powered up with this skill that could turn around an event of boring presentations into something that incorporated every voice, but also increased the potential output of every individual just by facilitating these funny little exercises with sticky notes. I was with that team for about 8 months, and then I left, and suddenly all of that went away. I am a trained amateur facilitator in design thinking, Think Wrong, and human-centered design, trying to hustle my services like it's something I would get paid for, but it's not. I'm in the military, so I could just shut up and color, but I want to help the organizations around me in a way I've been uniquely empowered to. In the 8 months I have been at my new assignment in Hawaii, I have convinced exactly one group, my flight, to let me facilitate. The feedback was glowing. They said they wanted more, but they want to wait until the next quarterly training day because they can't spend that much time outside of mission. Innovation and discovery are not a priority. I believe that a majority of military members trained in facilitated frameworks, as well as people within government offices that don't believe in these frameworks, will find themselves in the same situation as I'm in, isolated, facing an uphill cultural battle to be allowed to help people, and meanwhile, rapidly losing skills that atrophy over time if you don't use them. So here are the problems. We have zero organizational buy-in across the force for design thinking or other frameworks. It only exists in innovation-focused pockets. Separated, we are just a bunch of fast diminishing voices. We can't practice. We plan, organize, and recover alone. A majority of these candles we light will go out without some support. Project AGITARE is my solution to this problem. It is a community for facilitators of design thinking, Think Wrong, human-centered design, whatever, across the national security community. If you guide people through frameworks to help them bypass bias and maximize synergy, you are a facilitator. AGITARE is a Latin word that can mean agitate, urge, discuss, shepherd, and hunt. First and foremost, AGITARE brings the community together because being connected will keep us going. Especially outside the innovation centers, it can be rough to keep pushing. Being able to share our struggles and solutions with others helps immensely. We're doing that through regular virtual meetups, and we held our first one yesterday and had over 30 people show up. We're also spreading the word about facilitated discovery to national security organizations. We will curate and share blog posts from facilitators and other experts to spread the word, to get buy-in from organizations across the DoD and national security community so we can make facilitated discovery more accepted and more mainstream. We're also helping one another with planning, preparation, dry runs, and retrospectives, talking about specifics on exercises, getting feedback on a workshop plan. That's happening through our channel on the Defense Entrepreneurs Forum Slack and on those virtual meetups as well. Project AGITARE is me solving a problem for myself. I like to joke that it's the Daniel Holter Support Club, but I have shared it with a few fellow facilitators out there, and the response has been positive. Even just getting on a call together twice a month can be reinvigorating, and for many of us, it is the difference between continuing to hustle and just giving up. You can find us at agitare.def.org, or just find me on LinkedIn and I'll get you involved. We're going to make facilitation a felt need in every branch of the military and in the rest of the national security community, government offices, the IC, not just at the strategic level, but to replace pointless meetings and all the other fake discovery and development work that currently litters the status quo. Thank you very much.
Dan, thank you. That was awesome. Really excited to look or to participate, and I apologize in advance, or I guess after the fact, that I wasn't able to attend yesterday's event. We're going to move on to the next brief, but again, Dan and the next panel of, or the next couple presenters will be around at the very end for Q&A, and I'm sure a lot of folks in the audience are going to have questions about this, but really appreciate you presenting, Dan. So next up, we have Major Jared Cooper from the Krulak Center for Innovation and Creativity, which is part of Marine Corps University and the Corps' Education Command. We like to call ourselves, or they like to call themselves, Think Tank, Do Tank at Marine Corps University. And for those of you that don't know, General Brute Krulak was a famous general in the Marine Corps. They take an interdisciplinary approach to supporting all students and faculty at Marine Corps University through complex problem solving, fostering an environment that enhances meaning Marine Corps, collective warfighting capability, and facilitating and encouraging novel solutions to current and future warfighting challenges in order to expand the Corps' competitive edge and improve our warfighting effectiveness. So we'll get Jared up here to give his presentation in 1 second.
All right, perfect. Let's see what we got here. Oh.
There we go.
Okay.
Jared, if I missed anything.
Can y'all see that okay?
Yep, we got you. No screen share yet. You should have the.
Give me 1 second. Let's see. Is that working?
Yeah. Yep,
Okay.
got it.
It is.
Perfect. All right.
If I missed anything, Jared, please fill in the gaps.
Yeah. So I'm about to hit y'all with the most DoD of DoD PowerPoints here. So you're welcome, I guess. But yeah. So real quick, the Krulak Center at Marine Corps University. So just to kind of give you the bottom line up front is, like you said, Lucas, we like to coin ourselves as the Think Tank, Do Tank for the university, but really we're there to support all the students, so all MCU students, and then obviously by default, the rest of the fleet. So everything kind of ties right into here. So we were stood up as part of the QEP, which is essentially the quality education program and the accreditation of Marine Corps University. They identified that there were certain gaps that needed to be developed as far as modernizing education for the 21st century. So we drew inspiration from General Brute Krulak, who essentially was the catalyst for change at the beginning of World War II and incorporating the Higgins boat. So he's kind of the inspiration for us to go here. So here's the team and what we have. So we have 2 Title 10 employees, our director, Miss Val Jackson, the colonel in the reserves. We have 5 active duty Marines that are all tied into this and have been part of the MCU apparatus for a while, and then 6 Bren chairs. So the Bren chairs, as well as MES, Middle East Studies, are all subject matter experts in their respective fields. So I'll go a little bit shorter on this slide because you pretty much already announced it, but if you focus halfway through it, it's all about fostering an environment that enhances our collective warfighting. And we do that presenting novel solutions to certain current and future problems. And by challenging those that have the years and the time, both from their experience and their time at school, to really kind of address these issues. And then we essentially pull everyone together. So yeah, so that ties right in here. So what do? We're not necessarily in the widget development or products kind of like McWill or the Marine Corps Warfighting Lab. However, we do have a close relationship with them, especially when it comes to wargaming. We bring in subject matter experts from private industry, academia, the rest of the DoD, our partners and allies, and we tie them all together to support the student research when it comes to their master's in military studies. So we do that through these 4 lines of efforts. So first and foremost, the bedrock of it all is student support. So everything with the PhD and subject matter expertise weighed in to support the students, innovation summits, instructor support, doing faculty development exercises, bringing in guest speakers, as well as some more here with the advanced education opportunities and outreach. So we travel a lot, both to FMF or Fleet Marine Force units, partners or allies, and integrate it right here. So vertical and horizontal integrator. Tying in, like I said earlier, with academia, industry, all of our partners, and then bringing that down to the horizontal portion, which is everybody that encompasses MCU. So the Distance Education Program, School of Advanced Warfighting, EWS, Expeditionary Warfare School, and Command and Staff College. We try to bring all these capabilities and everything that everyone's working on to light, so everything's just not being done in a silo. One of the ways we do that is through wargaming. So we differ from McWill in the fact that we do wargaming for education and ethical decision making. So in light of the Commandant's recent planning guidance and our own direction from General Bargeron, we do a lot of wargaming in-house. We have our own little space for it. As we have analog or tabletop style games. We partner with Georgetown University on some of those. And then we also have the digital platforms. We also have speaker series. So you can see in the top left, Maggie will appreciate that, but that's Colonel Val Jackson there at the NatSecGirlSquad for 2019, talking about essentially empowering women in the DoD workspace and for national security. On top right, August Cole, Mark Sable, authors of Ghost Fleet. Down at the bottom, something kind of arbitrary, but we have essentially Mr. Donald Robertson, author of How to Think Like a Roman Emperor and Military Resiliency. So bottom line, it's a smorgasbord of what we provide to our students. Also, we have competitive writing and writing contests. So Destination Unknown is one of our really claim to fames, of which NavalX is pretty familiar. You can check it out on the link up there. But it's a graphic novel focused on operations in the future, encompassing unmanned aircraft, unmanned man teaming, everything else. So more of that. We also teach electives at the school. Here's an example of one that I just did this past January for command and staff. It's called Where Good Ideas Come From Steve Johnson's book. It's essentially focusing on topics, breaking the norm for this standard instructor-student kind of led method. You just focus on a topic instead of reading the same material over and over and regurgitating the same points. Everybody just kind of expounds on this, ties it all together, and it's long lasting. So you can kind of find the confluence of ideas and find where it's applicable for certain scenarios. Barrow Fellows focused on great power competition, specifically instruments of national power and those outside of the military. So broaden those in uniforms, understanding great power competition with China, and things that we normally don't think about when it comes to diplomatic, economic, and informational efforts. A lot of guest speakers, and that's open to pretty much everyone, not just Marines. Krulak Scholars, this was born of an article by former Lieutenant General Mike Dana. It's focused on the CPG, force design, future war. How do we educate and modernize the force to actually meet the demands that are coming out as part of the CPG? So what can we do from an academic and intellectual perspective to actually facilitate and retain that knowledge and expertise to better affect the future operating environment? Roadshows outreach. So what you see here, bottom left, DEF 2019, Defense Entrepreneurs Forum, bottom right, TWIN, the World Innovation Network in Chicago, tying in with industry and academia, kind of writ large. Also, we have stuff within the DoD. On the top left there is Sandhurst. So that's Colonel Val Jackson, Ian Brown, myself there at the Krulak Center. And then some future initiatives. Man, this is a whirlwind. So future initiatives is to continue to tie in deeply with the wargaming, everybody at the TCOM Warfighting Society, which are Education, Training Education Command, McWill, everyone else, and expand our outreach. So we're brand new. We just started up about a year ago. We're getting our feet under us. We have a solid social media platform, which is tying right here to our next development, which is essentially our new webpage. So right now we're under the existing AppFim system, which is a DoD secured system. It's not the best in the world, but we are upgrading. So working with NSIN, developing a new system that'll be coming online sometime this summer, but it'd be far more interactive. And we very much encourage you all to participate, and please hit me up afterwards. That's pretty much all I have. Thank you.
That was a whirlwind, and it's funny. I'm glad you did that, Jared, because I was really interested to see how the Pecha Kucha format would flow with, you're probably the most and you said that you're probably the most standard of the briefs that we've
Yeah,
seen.
man, and I even reduced the amount of slides to give me like a few extra seconds per slide, knowing how it was going to be. But yeah, that was fast.
No, you're right in on time. Just a reminder for anyone that just hopped in, the Pecha Kucha format is 20 slides at 20 seconds per slide, auto forwarding. And so that's why if you saw any transitions, it wasn't Jared pushing forward. It was the slideshow going. And so it's him playing catch up, and high energy, high calorie, as Brandon Smart would say. But it's definitely a fun format, and from my perspective, you nailed it. That was a lot of information, but you hit all the salient points, and I think there's going to be a lot of interest.
Yeah, I appreciate it. We're always open, so both here and afterwards, just excited to share and be a part of this. So thank you for doing this.
Yep, you got it, man. Okay, I see Jacqueline is up. So we will go with Jacqueline and Zach on the Jake. And then after them, we will go to Tom Pledger to close us up. So Jacqueline, I will kick it over to you and Zach.
I think Zach's going to start. Go ahead, Zach.
All right. Okay, let me get this up here. And all right, so can everybody hear me? See Jackie? See her screen? Okay, we got the tech check. So, all right, Lucas, you're not going to start our slides quite yet, right? Because you gave everybody a really good intro because they gave you the prep to be able to enable you to do so. And our intro was essentially, here's Jacqueline and Zach. So
I apologize for that. Hang on, let me.
No, it's all right. We can intro ourselves. In fact, I kind of
I am so sorry. Hey, moderator foul. That was a moderator foul. I'll push.
No, it's all good. We can do burpees after together. I think that we got the mic, I guess, collectively here, and we'll just go with it. But thank you for letting us be able to do this. And hey, everybody out there in CAWcast world. So I'm Major Zach Lucas, United States Marine Corps active duty, and I got my counterpart there. This is my first co-president on Zoom. This is my first Pecha Kucha, and this is my first opportunity to speak actually officially on behalf of the Jake. So a lot of firsts for us, and I know Jacqueline, who just joined our team, may also as well. But I just wanted to kind of open up with why the Jake really, and then hand it over to Jacqueline. But the DoD is in a digital readiness crisis, and frankly has been for a while. And AI is not a standalone solution, but the suite of technologies and skill sets required to bring AI to the Department of Defense by default requires revolutionary leaps in both technology, skill sets, and in particularly the DoD's culture. And that's been mentioned a lot today. So is the Jake therefore innovative? Well, that depends on your perspective. Are you inside the Jake? Are you outside of the Jake? Are you elsewhere in the federal government? Are you an innovation partner in industry? But particularly for the DoD, I would argue that the Jake, in fact, is the DoD's and the Chief Information Officer's response to the call for innovation. Ben mentioned it earlier, the Defense Innovation Board helped establish the Jake, and it was formally established by memo by the Deputy Secretary of Defense in 2018. We were inside the PALM cycle, so we got reprogrammed money and detailed temporary people to help establish this organization to regain a competitive advantage in the AI space. And so just keep that in the back of your mind as we blow through these slides here at 20 seconds apiece. And Jacqueline, over to you.
Awesome, thanks. Hey everyone, and thank you so much for the opportunity. I'm really excited to be here. I read in the chat box, just so everybody knows, real late that we should not have a really distracting background behind us, but I'm a disruptor, so apologies. You will see, I think, a NavalX box right back there, so I feel like that should buy me a little bit of cred. If you want to go to our first slide, or second one.
You're good, Jacqueline.
I can't see the slide change. Slide? No? Okay. Slides are not going, but I will just go through the audio. All right, so our first slide is a picture. I'm just going to describe it for you because what I see is our title slide. Our first slide is a picture of the cult classic office space with the "What would you say you do here?" guys on it. Can y'all hear me?
We can hear you. We still see the we can still see the Jake presentation slide. Showing the 9 April 2020 CAWcast. So
I don't have anything. Zach, do you have? Sorry.
No, I do. I'm popping it back.
There
Okay.
we go.
Right.
I think everyone can see the slides
Cool.
now.
Now can we go back to the first one? Nope. Yep. Awesome. Cool.
All right.
All right. Sorry, guys. This is what makes this fun, right? Experimentation. All right. So this is obviously an image from the cult classic, The Office. What would you say you do here? And the reason that we put it in here is because there are a lot of people that don't yet know what the Jake does. And frankly, the Jake is kind of in a 2.0 realignment, whatever you want to call it, sort of after its first year and a half, 2 years of discovery and self-exploration and learning. We're figuring out what our own business model is. And so that's why we wanted to sort of start with an introduction, really, to not only what the Jake is intended to be by that DevSecDev memo that Zach mentioned, but where we're going. So here's the way in which I think about the Jake and where we're going. First, there was Goldwater Nichols. So points to anybody that got that kind of reference. Goldwater Nichols overhauled the pre-1986 sort of stovepipe service model within the department, introducing the idea of really joint operations and streamlining chain of command, and ultimately leading to the creation of Special Operations Command. So a lot of sort of creation and innovation. The Jake, and AI in particular, to me, is that sort of unstoppable catalyst for Goldwater Nichols 2.0, or something conceptually akin to that. So the Jake was stood up with the goal of using AI for large, complex problem sets within the department that span multiple services, and most importantly, that ensure that the services and components have real-time access to ever-improving libraries of data sets and tools. That's really important. Like, we don't currently have that, certainly not inculcated and centralized. So y'all didn't really think that we were going to get fully away from a crazy busy DoD graphic representation, right? I mean, we are the Jake, yes. We're effectively a startup. We're breaking molds and pushing hard against longstanding boundaries, archaic policy, risk-averse cultural practices, instantiated over decades, but we're still DoD, so give us a minute. We're getting there. So here's what that last eye chart translates into in terms of our business, where we're going. This is what this looks like. The Jake is in the business of transforming the DoD through AI, and we're doing that through what we call the 5 Ps: people, products, policy, platform, and protection. This is important because I want y'all to think of each of these Ps as a thing that we are productizing, or at least creating templates for the entire department. People as a product. That sounds terrible, but I'm going to explain in a second. So we are defining, creating, productizing, as it were, people. In that, we are creating an AI workforce for the department, an AI-ready workforce for the department. What does that mean? In terms of our products, the current areas that we have in terms of our national mission initiatives are joint warfighting, warfighter health, intelligent business automation, cyber predictive maintenance, and AGITARE. We're learning lessons about and productizing ethical AI policy. Think about that for a sec. We are productizing ethical AI policy. And we're happy to take some questions about that in the Q&A. We're creating a model and templates for AI platform development for the department and for deployment. So again, productizing what this platform could look like to share tools and data sets and standards, et cetera. And then finally, for the department, on behalf of the department, with you all, we're figuring out and productizing what AI protection looks like. What do we need to do in terms of counter AI? What do we need to be thinking about from an intelligence and operations fusion perspective? All right, so where we wanted to really take this presentation was we decided not to sort of just go through the normal 101 with y'all. We decided to actually crowdsource for this presentation. So we asked 15 folks from around the JAIC that have all different responsibilities, civilian, military, contractor, 3 questions each to help you guys really understand who we are, what we do, what you should expect to see from us this year, and most importantly, why we are all doing it. And so I'm going to turn it over to Zach to take us through that.
Thanks, Jacqueline. So like Jacqueline said, the first question that we asked them was, JAIC has a unique imperative to transform the DoD through AI. And we asked them to describe what that meant to them, why it drew them to the JAIC, or why it keeps them at the JAIC. So the first answer we got was that it means giving the department the opportunity to leverage a game-changing suite of capabilities, technology, and forced cultural and mindset shifts in order to catalyzed by AI to ensure we maintain our competitive advantage. This underwrites our continued ability to maintain the principles of democracy and our American way of life. So ironically, or perhaps even more fittingly, Game Changer is the name of one of those products that's forcing innovation in the policy space. The next answer we got was that from inside the JAIC, they've seen what data can do when it's leveraged properly. They're fascinated by what data and AI can do, drawing new insights from looking at old problems in new ways, drawing new conclusions to gain a more holistic perspective. And they believe that AI can improve existing DoD business, not just adding new things. I think that's really powerful. We actually had one team member, a JAICster, as we call them, who fought hard to come to the JAIC, just to be a member of the team. They knew that they needed to be there. That's how confident they were. They demanded to be on the team to force positive change in the DoD. So we are breaking bad. We're breaking bureaucracy, but we're doing it in a way that keeps the allied relationships that we need. And we're making it better for the service members and their families to do what the taxpayers expect. There is revolutionary change across the department, and that's making improvements for the warfighter. And AI is at the fore of that. The second question was, what specifically is your team doing to move the JAIC closer to our imperative to transform the DoD? We're leveraging advances in technology, better understanding how to clean, curate data, access it, and get more aircraft ready to fight tonight, improving readiness through predictive maintenance, leveraging AI. We've also started a project in support of COVID. It's a key example of what the JAIC is doing in FY20 to move towards this imperative. There's a ton of data to include non-traditional data stores for DoD, combined with an operational sense of urgency. We're blazing trails in this area, and we're at a cycle rate in this particular effort that is consistent with commercial capabilities. That's pretty exceptional for the department. Continuous integration, continuous development cycle, and it's keeping up with the mission need. That's rare for any organization in the DoD that isn't like an RCO. But this needs to become the norm. It's not just supposed to be centralized in the JAIC. We're also developing security classification guidance that's specific to AI for the JAIC to use internally, at least as a template. And then that will be something that could be productized, like Jacqueline mentioned, for the rest of the department. It's an AI-related information that we work with every day, properly classified, marked, and safeguarded. We're collaborating with partners to advance other security classification principles for the department. The third question was, how will we know we've been successful at the end of this FY? Well, there's more people. There's more entities, both inside and outside the DoD, who understand the mission of the JAIC, and we can show this success because their knowledge, their attitudes, and behaviors are positive about and supportive of the JAIC in action. Did the program office build our capability into their palms so that we can appropriately integrate it into an existing capability? Did it improve the user's ability to do their job? And did it improve the platform's ability to provide effectiveness to the warfighter? Did it improve our overall competitive advantage of efficiency, effectiveness, speed, gaining new insights, and lethality? Did we increase and sustain our relationship with combatant commanders, the Defense Innovation Board, the National Security Council on AI, Congress, key industry, academic, and foreign and allied partners? Did we gain feedback from the services and components that our products are enabling their digital modernization? by engaging those charged with such modernization and ensuring that their capabilities are available to impact the warfighter. We hope that we've convinced you that not only are we doing everything in our power to ensure that we don't come across like these crazy, adorable, but vastly inefficient little patriots on the left, and we're organizing, gearing up, and ready to be the department's equivalent of the winning team on the right. We only win as a team, and we just ask that you come join us in one way or another on your projects, on your search for AI, or perhaps even as part of our team. Thank you.
That was awesome. Thanks, Zach and Jacqueline. I kind of, now going back, would have probably put you in with the DIB and PIF briefs from Ken and Ben, because that was kind of some of the questions they were receiving. But I'm glad to kind of close the loop on the AI conversation. Glad you guys are briefing where you are. We have one more brief from Major Tom Pledger, who, unlike Zach and Jacqueline, I will intro. Now that that's fresh on my mind that I messed that up. So I'll intro Tom, and then immediately following his brief, we'll do a Q&A session for the last round of panelists you just saw. So without further ado, let me get my notes. Major Thomas G. Pledger, he's with the Army National Guard Directorate within the National Guard Bureau. He's currently working on refining the process and techniques that the Army National Guard Directorates use to engage, support, and staff. Headquarters, Department of the Army, National Guard Bureau, Army service components across the states, territories, and District of Columbia, and various other agencies with equity. So it's great to have Tom here. He and I actually go back to our days at the Joint Iowa Warfare Center, where we supported U.S. Special Operations Command together. But it's also good to have another perspective. You know, we've had Air Force, we've had Marines, we've had civilians outside of the DoD, and now we get not only the Army, but the Army National Guard, which at this point, you know, with everything going on today, they're busy because the National Guard across the country is helping out with the COVID response. So without further ado, Thomas, I kick it over to you, my friend. You should have a share screen button.
Yep, I got you, Lucas. I'm just going to say hi to everybody, and let's go ahead and start this. Sure. All right, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. So here's my blank and 20-second slide. So good afternoon, good morning, and good evening across the globe. So I am Thomas Pledger. I am at the National Guard Bureau. Technically, I'm inside the Army National Guard Directorate, which is inside National Guard Bureau. I am in the Chief of Staff's office, and I've been currently tasked to refine the processes and how we engage across the force. And it's really key. So this is sort of the look most people give us when we say we're with the Army National Guards. What exactly is it you say you do here? Historically speaking, you've seen the memes online of the fat soldier deployed in the chow hall with the cupcakes and all that stuff. I'd say that's probably not a fair assessment anymore. The Army National Guard has, as you can see right here, the state response for disasters. We're currently deployed in every state and all the territories in support of COVID and the medical responses that go within that. We're busy. We got that, and we're basically trying to do this under our own authorities and not be federalized because we restrict a lot of our authorities there. We train everywhere the Army and the military goes. We do the same combat training center rotations. We participate in the globally integrated exercises. This guy right here is in Alaska, and he's freezing it up there shooting rounds. But not only do we do all the training that you guys do, all the active duty does, we also conduct other operations below the level of conflict. We got engineers here in the Middle East, it looks like Iraq, and they are currently trying to clean up where a VBID went off. This is an older picture, yeah, but still rather relevant. I've been to the Middle East twice, Afghanistan once, and I know I'm not amongst here. This right here is from last year. These vehicles were in Syria. We go everywhere the Army goes, everywhere the military goes. I directly coordinated with the Marines, the Air Force, the Navy, while I was on multiple deployments. So that's where we're at. Now let's sort of get into who we work for. So this is one of our old Minuteman symbol, and you may have heard a controversy that happened last year over this symbol. The generation that's coming up right now didn't recognize the Minuteman right there in the middle as an old white guy fighting for America. The history of that wasn't taught, as the plow, because that's his plow in the background representing. So this is the new emblem we got, which is the Army National Guard. The funny thing is this is one of those great service issues, is this has been technically assigned to only be supporting for the recruiting and retention command. It's one of those little funny little tidbits. We still see it all over the place, but it's there. So who we work for? Technically, we work for the Chief of the National Guard Bureau over there on the far right. That is who we go for. That is our primary boss. He's on the Joint Chiefs of Staff, has same say as the Commandant, CNO, and the Chief of the Staff of the Army and the Chief of the Staff of the Air Force. Now, when it gets a little more intricate, because we also work for the Secretary of the Army right over here. But at the same time, what you don't see on here is the Chief of Staff of the Army. So we engage with the Chief of Staff of the Army and his staff on a daily basis, which gives us sort of a dual line that we engage, which creates some of those complications, which leads us to this place. And we're going to talk about this right side here in a few seconds. The governors, the adjutant generals, they are their own complicating factor on how we engage across the force. 20 seconds. So it leads us to the Pentagon, in which we all have, most of us have had time to walk through the Pentagon, and it's the same places. We have offices in there as the Army National Guard. The National Guard Bureau has offices in there, and HQDA has offices in there, and we coordinate across all three of them on a daily basis. It's very difficult, very time consuming sometimes. But as we all know, the puzzle palace is the Pentagon, creates meetings upon meetings and always trying to figure out who will make the final decision. So those are our sort of up bosses that we talked about. We got CNGB, we got Secretary of the Army, we got the Chief of Staff of the Army. And so that's sort of the up. Now we're going to go sort of across. So we also are responsible as the directorate to the Army Service Component Commands, all 10 of them, the geographic and the functionals. Except for we really don't respond to the reserves right there, second over. And we also coordinate with all of the direct reporting units that we coordinate with. And we do this in order to help train, develop, and deploy the Army National Guard forces across. Then that leads us to the adjutant generals, of which for the Army National Guard and the various status functions operate like a multinational land component commander. The directorate provides guidance and resources, and the tags, who are the commanders, can choose what to do. They don't get as much leeway as they'd like sometimes, but they're still basically the commander for their army. But that doesn't lead us all. We also have the 50 states and DC. So we also have Guam, the Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, and American Samoa out there. So it's not just the continental United States that we deal with. We're also responsible for those supports. The Army National Guard has multiple divisions with none belonging wholly to one state or one adjutant general, so that complicates. The director's relationships to the tags and governors can be touchy when it comes to resources and force structures, as most governors and tags have a direct line to their congressmen. And the congressmen will and do make very poignant conversations on topics that are close to home. A key example of this is when the Army was trying to take away the Apaches. Congressmen would call and talk to the Chief of Staff of the Army about that exact point on multiples. In the end, it leads us to this place, too many cooks, all discussing on resources, all discussing on the force development, all discussing on deployments, and everybody gets an opinion.
Okay. Just wanted,
as soon as, I love the chef. And as soon as some brief is built, some other staff section from any of the above comes in and makes its weight known. And as the Army National Guard Directorate is led by the director, a 3-star, and not a commander, this makes things much more touchy for moving through. Which leads us to our current situation. The Army National Guard Directorate is looking at changing the way we assign forces and talent, pushing more and more talented outside agencies, the Army Service Component Commands, the direct reporting units, HQDAs, the National Guard Bureau, FEMA, DHS, all of these outside agencies as a liaison network to increase and speed up ours. We actually just went through a full manning document review, and that's where we're at. Which brings us to my current issue. Right now, I'm looking at the 3 different templates that we get and up and out. So right now, I'm sorry, as I get on a daily basis when I try to help people, I'm sorry my job is here to try to make your job easier. And I'm gonna pause there.
All right. Thank you, Tom. Now I know a lot more. Sorry, Lucas, you go ahead. I'll handle the Q&A after you say your piece.
No, really appreciate it, Tom. I think that the Army National Guard is a not well understood part of the military. And, I only know personally about it from my interaction with you for the better part of 3 years. So greatly appreciate you coming on and talking about some of the things that you all are facing, what you're working on, where you are, because as we look out, across the DoD and the IC, we can now look at the National Guard and have a better understanding of what you all do and how you can help and how we can help you. So greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, so Tom, if you don't mind sticking around, but Jared, Zach, and Jacqueline, if you don't mind turning your video screens back on. A couple questions for folks out there, and we'll start with Daniel. Hang on, I'm going to go through and I'm going to hunt you down and ask you all to turn them on. There's 1, there's 2. Oh, Jared beat me to it. Thank you.
Well, good.
So we have one question again from Sean Bertholf out there, and this is for Daniel. We agree that there is enormous resistance within large organization, not just the military, to adopting and accepting these changes, design thinking specifically. They are so resistant that they aren't even willing to listen. I share this with a colleague recently, and she told me about the ADCAR change management. Have you heard of it?
So I did just look up the ADCAR change management system. So now I have, and that is the acronym: awareness, desire, knowledge, ability, and reinforcement. That those are the things required to manage change effectively. And yeah, that sounds pretty solid to me. One of the biggest issues that I think we face within the innovation realm is this misperception about what innovation should look like. A lot of people think that it's like a process with a good outcome. Just at the end, you do the process right, and then there's a deliverable. And if you did it right, then there's not like a lot of waste there. I like to tell people that innovation is an extremely inefficient process. There is a ton of stuff that feels like waste, but it is about as wasteful as working out your muscles. Like, the people doing training exercises to prepare for war or those things, we've all accepted that you have to do certain activities to maintain readiness. With innovation, it's not exactly the same thing, because you're not like, you're trying to reach a level of like, I like to say, potentiation, where you're at the peak potentiation for innovativeness, which requires these cultural conditions, and it requires that you have these ongoing practices that facilitate ongoing discovery, that facilitate psychological safety. Convincing people to bring those things into their organization when they're only willing to bring in things that have measurable outcomes is impossible. It's so especially with something like, design thinking, I like to tell people that if we adopt these methods, at the very least, it's going to be way more productive than our current method of bringing people together and having meetings or trying to come to consensus. So that is one of the immediate measurable outputs that you can show people is, hey, instead of doing your summit the way that you were planning on doing it without a trained facilitator, or just with a bunch of people giving PowerPoint presentations, how about you bring in a facilitator and give them that experience? So I see that as part of the change management thing, is giving people the opportunity to experience it but also we have to change this perception of innovation as something that can be an efficient process. Because if you're going for efficiency, then you're converging early. You are, and one of the most important things in innovation is that you diverge and you don't converge at the same time. You need to have these divergent processes that put all options, all cards on the table to do maximum exploratory work before you start converging. And if you're asking yourself right now, am I being efficient? Is this the right, like when you do a sticky note exercise or something, and like, I don't know if this is the right idea to put on the board. Wrong. It's about quantity during the convergence or the divergent phase of innovation. And we need to convince people of the value of that.
I couldn't agree with you more, Daniel. Having gone through the Warfighter Center design class through the Centers for Adaptive Warfighting, I have become a practitioner and a believer on my own. I wish I could have expended some of the knowledge that I've recently gained back in January in my past 10 years in the Marine Corps. So, and I can tell you from firsthand experience, so I helped facilitate the Warfighter Center design workshop at Carnegie Mellon University with the United States Marine Corps' AI community of interest. And typically when people hear, the eye rolls, okay, here comes the OPT, this is what we do. We'll spend a whole week just listening to people talk about themselves and their ideas. But it was sensational feedback, and we got some great products. There's still some sausage making you got to do, obviously. There's still products that need to be built, but that divergent and then convergent thinking that brought everyone to the same page and really reached outside the fringes of what a typical meeting can get you to grab those great stickies and those great ideas really fell into our lap through that process, and people's eyes kind of widened and they're like, wow, how do we do this in other places? So thanks for fighting the good fight.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
One of the reasons I like to say potentiation is, and I saw somebody mention the word potentiation being weird in the chat. Potentiation, the way I'm thinking of it, comes from neurology. It's like you have these synapses and they don't fire a neurological signal between these two synapses until one of them reaches a certain state of like excitation or electrical charge. And once it reaches that, it can fire. So I like to think of it in terms of you're trying to get the culture or the level of psychological safety to a point where those signals can be continuously firing, because it's like people won't speak up. People will hesitate to say when they have an idea, for example, unless you have the conditions right, like the leader is approachable, or people are just working out loud, or there is a sufficient psychological safety for people to really not care if other people think their idea is bad. And that's what you want. You want those conditions so that those signals can be continuously firing. And the other thing I like to say is that the things that we think of as indicators that we're doing the right thing tend to be lagging indicators. They're like in business world, it's how much, like what our quarterly profits are or quarterly earnings. And those are lagging indicators. Those won't actually tell you if you're going to continue to do well. One of the most interesting early indicators for success is actually employee engagement and happiness. Those things can tell you if you are going to see future success in your organization. And so I think we kind of have it mixed up. We're like, oh no, the most important thing is if we made a profit this quarter. No, actually, like that tells you if you did okay last time. But the only thing that can tell you if you're going to do okay next time are these cultural indicators or these psychological or these leadership indicators.
That's valuable insight. Thank you, Daniel. Moving on, Jared, this one is over to you. So Devin Smiley asks from the queue, what kind of coordination do you do with Naval Postgraduate School? Seems like a significant source of technical resources and interested Marines. This guy, having been a byproduct of that institution, and now here I am talking to a guy like you. I see that you answered it in the Q&A session, but do you want to elaborate or extrapolate?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so I mean, we did just recently visit them last August as part of a new, like they kind of retermed it, logistics operations in a contested environment forms. A little bit of brainstorming there, how to better do things in an EABO construct. But there's a little bit of tie-in, probably not as much as there needs to be, but it's essentially just contact with Colonel Pugh over there at NPS and putting people together for creative writing articles, as well as some of the latest and greatest research that we try to pair the command and staff students up with in particular for their master's in military studies. Another thing too is they have Major Eric Kim. He's going to be contributing to our Innovation Summit, the virtual Innovation Summit this year. So he was identified for coming up with a creative solution using essentially like bio AI, I guess is the best way to put it. Yeah, using more biographical or like biometrics to identify certain potential problems and stuff. So it's kind of interesting. So that's something that'll be recorded in the latter part of this month or early May, and we'll push that out in aggregate with some of the other things. But yeah, it's limited, but it's definitely something we can expound upon more. I know it was kind of brief and very speedy when I went through the PowerPoint there, but there's just a few of us in the center, so we're trying to kind of expand that network. So if you have any ideas or anything that you want to pursue in particular, please let us know. I'd be more happy to help.
That's excellent. Thank you. And I will have a question for you, actually, personally, based on my experience at MPS and in the AI sphere and my CS background with the MOVES Institute as well. But before that, Sean asks, again for Jared, I'm curious, since the Marine Corps is part of the Department of the Navy, how much integration is there between what you described and NavalX and the CAW, Centers for Adaptive Warfighting? And is there a different focus for each?
John, you probably weigh in on the story. You can weigh in too, man. I think we have a great relationship. Having come up and visit your facility there in Alexandria and everything else, or at least the NavalX side. But really, it's very like-minded. So we're a kind of an integrator as well. So, but we are primarily Marine Corps University student focused. So, am I still transmitting here? Looks like a lot of screens have frozen. Okay, so you'll see me.
Yep,
okay.
yep. No, you're just, everyone's intently listening. Please.
Okay, that's it. Yeah, just focused, huh? Yeah, so we've been primarily MCU student focused for a while. We are broadening that apparatus there and trying to integrate further. So I know for EWS, Expeditionary Warfare School, it's a captain's level course in the Marine Corps for those that aren't familiar. We recently paired them up with NavalX, especially those, the logisticians that are focused on additive manufacturing and distributed environments and stuff. So it's a healthy collaborative relationship, if you will.
Oh, that's excellent. And John may be able to elaborate on that a little bit. Currently, he had to step out for something, but thank you for that response. Let's see. Moving along, we've got, so I have a question for you since the question and answer queue is a bit empty. So again, to everyone who's still listening, paying attention, thank you. If you have a question for anybody here, please drop it in the Q&A tab at the bottom, wiggle your mouse, have it pop up. And if I've been seeing a lot of questions, people are interested in the slides, please go ahead and leave your request in the Q&A box. That way we can track it down earlier and we can send it to your Eventbrite email that you use to sign up for this event. So I was graduated from MPS with a master's in computer science, and I specialized from MOVES, the modeling and virtual environment simulations. So I got to play with some virtual headsets, which are currently seeing a resurgence in this social isolation sphere that we see ourselves in. Really, I'm super happy to see the technology starting to be adopted. A lot of research pointed me to, building trust in AI systems, using interfaces. I thought VR was a very interesting way because you could infer quite a bit of human interaction just from posture and body tracking. But is MCU doing anything when it comes to wargaming and leveraging virtual reality, augmented reality technologies?
So limited when it comes to VR, AR type stuff. So our military innovation chair, Dr. Brandon Valeriano, is working with Dr. Benjamin Jensen, who's over at the School of Advanced Warfighting as part of the TCOM Warfighting Society, exploring new ways to kind of conduct distributed wargaming and augmented reality in particular. Also, Major Tim Riemann, current student at SAW, is doing his Innovation Summit presentation on modernize and advanced levels of learning to fit the younger generations. It's kind of like everything in a nutshell. So it's exactly that. it's understanding the preponderance of students, younger students these days, and junior Marines in particular, because that's really the target audience, likes things like the graphic novel, which we did with the Destination Unknown aspect. And they like things like YouTube and video game type stuff to kind of teach it and learn it and experience it. So trying to make education more of an experience versus just something you regurgitate and can pull from rote memory. So that is definitely something that's being explored. We've done a little bit with Microsoft HoloLens, but it's still very much in development. Part of that was going to be a display at the Innovation Summit. Unfortunately, all the vendors, everything else are now, it's all been canked, obviously. But that is definitely something we're exploring more and more and has a ton of potential.
Moving along with higher education, is it only officers or just a select few that attend the University of the Marine Corps? Do you train enlisted Marines as well from Sean in the audience?
Yeah, great question. So here on the resident campus at MCU, between the 5 schools that we support, which is for the captains, Expeditionary Warfare School, majors, command and staff, then School of Advanced War Informer, it's another advanced course for majors, and then the Marine Corps War College for lieutenant colonels, typically post command. We also have CME, the College of Enlisted Military Education, who we're partnered with very closely, and they focus on all the staff academies. So everything is across the board. So on the resident campus, we have, give or take, about 700 individuals, but we have 90,000+ out in the fleet that all this goes towards. So everything is via Moodle, a distributed environment, and then that's part of the road shows where we try to get out there and broaden everyone's horizon so they can tie it into the fleet. Real quick anecdote here. Last night, we conducted a conference with the command team from 12th Marines and some from 3rd MEF on a war game that we recently did with a commercial off-the-shelf game on a 12th Marines augmentation to 3 MEF and the Joint Force capabilities in the first island chain using, like I said, a commercial game. So there is more of that, and now they're going to download that. We'll go out and facilitate some of it, but it's creating more of this network, this autonomous network that people can kind of operate on their own, that we just kind of leverage and build a repository of games, information, everything else to kind of share with people, if that makes sense.
Excellent. Well, as a consumer of graphic novels, video games, and things that you say the younger generation does, I appreciate the compliment, and I'm going to just stick with that, move right along. Jacqueline and Zach, so there are a lot of folks out there, I know at MCTISA, the Tactical AI Cell specifically as well, we want to get involved, we want to help. So, and we're aware that there's national mission initiatives out there that the Jake's working on. I guess there's also some studies that are being enacted here pretty soon or ongoing right now. How do, the defense industrial complex, innovators in the fleet and just outside the fleet that want to help get in touch? You dropped some information there, but is there a medium that we can reach out to the Jake and say, hey, how can I participate?
Yeah, I'll start, and then Zach can back me up because I'm in my day 30, I think, something like that, of being at the Jake. So www.ai.mil is going to be the best way for you to sort of just connect with us writ large. I think you'll see a little bit of what we're up to. You'll see sort of where we are present from a social media perspective. We have a great social media presence, I think. We're doing a lot on LinkedIn. We're doing a lot on Twitter, et cetera. And so I think you should be able to find us fairly easily. Obviously, both Zach and I have our personal emails and cell phone information on the slides. So if you guys request the slides, please reach out to us that way. From an industry perspective, we actually have a dedicated industry rep, Colonel Doug Drakely, who sits inside DIU out in California and does a lot of our industry interface, although I believe we're going to be sort of amping up that capability for the Jake, potentially in some different locations. So if you're interested in that kind of liaison type of thing, we definitely want to hear from you. You can reach out to myself or Zach or just through AI.mil. And then obviously anybody, within DoD or sort of working with DoD in partnership, I think, again, any of the AI.mil or our just generic email addresses, just reach out to us. We'll direct you to the right place. We're hiring, so please be on the lookout for that. For civilians, I just want to offer, it's really interesting because if you have been in the government for as long as I have, so I've been in DoD and the intel community for about 12 years, And having to go through USA jobs, which kind of is the way in which a lot of the civilians have to do this, is probably the most painful thing, one of the most painful things government-wise. And AI.mil actually cuts through that. So you just basically send your resume and sometimes a cover letter if they ask for one, and that's it. So you get to bypass that. And we're actively seeking active duty and reservists, guard members. So please, please, please reach out. We definitely want a lot of additional diversity of expertise and thought, as Maggie pointed out at the beginning, as we sort of cultivate this really, really creative, powerful team of thought leaders in the JAIC. Zach, what did I miss?
Anything over to you, Zach?
Yeah, thanks, Jacqueline. That was actually a really good soundbite for someone who's only been here for 30 days. So you can't mess up with our website. You can't go wrong with just connecting with anybody on the JAIC team. And there are ways to get to us, and someone will try to find you to the right folks. You know, and we're kind of a startup, like she said, so we're trying to find a way to have our portal kind of direct everybody to the people that you'd like to get in contact with. You'd click on a national mission initiative and you'd see that, you know, where joint warfighting talks about C2 and you're working a C2 problem in the AI space, and that would be able to connect you to the joint warfighting team. Beyond that, I would say that talking to either of us, you know, one of the great things about the innovation ecosystem is the fact that we just love to help each other out and we want to help each other solve problems. And so while the answer may not actually reside in the JAIC, we definitely want to know who you are and what you're doing. We want to know what your questions are. We want your user or your problem feedback, but we also can act as a connector through the AI spectrum. And so being a catalyst just through the connecting of human to human. A lot of people have come across my email box, my desk, or my Slack channels, and all I've done is literally connect them to someone else and then gone hands off because there's nothing I could actually do for them at that time. And then the last thing I would plug is that particularly for those that are in the DoD right now, if you're working a problem and you want to come work at the JAIC, you don't have to actually be employed by the JAIC. You can be detailed if your unit is willing to give you up. And I guarantee you, you're going to go back with not only the connections, but a lot of upskilling that's going to occur there. And you're going to have a strategic view that even the service chiefs at this point don't really have.
Thank you for that. Lucas, so I see that there are a couple more questions in the queue, but we also want to be respectful of their time, and your face popped up. So you let me know if we're cleared hot or if it's time to sign off.
So I would just say to be respectful of all our friends that are viewing's time, that we close up shop. But what I would encourage all the panelists to do is go into the Q&A and you can type your responses there. Get more coordination with them. And then for the panelists as well, like I see something from Tom to Jared about SOCOM and the UK Ministry of Defense have an effort for virtual reality educational systems, or perhaps Project AGITARE, helping out the National Guard. There's a lot of collaboration and cross-pollination that we can have. Yeah, that we can have, throughout this event and beyond. So I would encourage all the panelists, whether they're online or not, to reach out to each other and see how we can help support each other. And then if there's any other questions, contact.the.caw, C-A-W, @gmail.com. Contact the CAW at gmail.com is how you can get in touch with us. If you want the slides, we'll push all the slides that we have available through there. And really appreciate everyone tuning in. And until next time, keep an eye out on LinkedIn and follow us on LinkedIn, and we'll make sure we push out the next event. Really appreciate it, and we'll sign out here.
Yeah. Yep. You can look for these webinars hosted on the NavalX YouTube channel, as well as, like Lucas said, follow NavalX on LinkedIn. And these are all pre-recorded. Go back and watch the other videos if you've missed them up until this point as well. Sorry, Lucas. I want you to have the last word. I'm so sorry. I'm signing off. I'm signing off.
Yeah, greatly appreciate it. This was awesome.
Last word.